If you could take a moment and go to thegrowingbanddirector.com to give at least $5 or $3 a month, and it helps the content continue to be created for you to help our profession grow. Let's go back to our scheduled episode. Excelsior Music Publishing is proud to sponsor the Growing Band Director podcast. The new concert band and jazz ensemble music releases from Excelsior Music Publishing are here now and available from wherever you get your band music, featuring works of all levels from an incredible composer roster. Listen, browse, and get inspired at excelsiormusic.com. That's EXCELCIA music.com. Tuner Caddy is proud to sponsor the Growing Band Director podcast. The Tuner Caddy was created by Mark Casperson, a band director with over 38 years of experience. Like most of us, he was tired of dropped tuners, wasted time, and students fumbling with their gear. So he did what any passionate teacher would do. He invented a solution. Mark designed the original Tuner Caddy after testing 57 different versions. The classic model fits right onto most music stands, holds any tuner, and even has a pencil holder. Then he added the Student Pro, a slimmer, binder-friendly with magnets, so it sticks right to the wire stands. And now there's even the TCT60M, a full tuner and metronome combo that's transposable and includes a 6-foot mic. Super practical and more affordable than most other options out there. The best part is that these tools don't just help kids stay organized, they actually improve how we teach intonation and tone. Tuner Caddy is being used by some of the top programs in the country, from Texas to Virginia, and it's even been on stage at the Midwest Clinic and Music for All Festival. You can find Tuner Caddy at tunercaddy.com, at local retailers, or through Music and Arts, Sweetwater, and Premier Music Teaching Aids. They even offer support for educators writing grants. Check them out at tunercaddy.com. Do you spend valuable time all year correcting students' hand position instead of focusing on the music? Thumb Gummy solves this. These simple, cost-effective teaching aids fit on trumpets and trombones to guide the right hand into proper position, reducing tension, improving form, and giving tactile feedback so students can focus on playing, not adjusting. It's easy to use, comfortable, and designed by teachers and players, not just for your beginners, but for older students as well. Join thousands of students and bands already seeing the difference. And keep an eye out for our new clarinet thumb rest coming soon. Visit thumbgummy.com to learn more. That's thumbgummy.com. Welcome back to the Growing Band Director podcast. This is episode number 277. I'm here with Nick Atchley, assistant principal at Fremont Middle School in Illinois. Nick, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Beautiful. So why do I have an administrator on a Growing Band Director podcast? Tell us a little bit about your history as an administrator and as a band director.
Well, I'm the assistant principal at Fremont Middle School in Mundelein, Illinois. This is I just finished 14 years as an administrator. I was a band director and a music teacher for 9 years prior to that. I got into administration after I had a second principal approach me about it. When I first started teaching, I worked in the various schools in the city of Chicago. And then I worked at one of my schools hired me. I was the K-8 music teacher and band teacher for 3 years. Um,
Hmm.
that particular principal thought I should take a leadership role. And at the time, you're in your 20s, you're like, no, 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 band for life, band for life. I ended up taking a position in McHenry, Illinois, teaching band, just straight band instead of all of the music and choir and all that. So I wanted to focus on one area. And then 4 years into that and a lot of concerts and contests later, my principal at the time, he approached me when they were going to have a shift in the office. Hey, what do you think about this? And I thought, this is the second time someone's come up to me with this. Maybe why not? And so it kind of evolved from there where I was the dean of students for 9 years there. I already had a music master's degree. Worked on my second degree while I did that. I moved over here to the Fremont School District as the assistant principal at the 3-5 building, which is across the street. And a couple of years ago, I moved over to they had a need for an assistant principal at the middle school, and it came up that I might have some middle school experience. They asked me how many years, and I said, I don't know, 18 years. And so it was pretty much there that I became the assistant principal over here.
Are there any days that you go, man, I wish I could go into that band room right now and just do music for an hour? Does that ever come up?
There are times when you think, man, it would be a lot easier to work on those on even some of those harder scales. We'll take a B scale today. I'll take
Yep.
a B scale. We'll try it, but I do pop in here and there just to hear what they're doing, and try to hear that our jazz bands are just fantastic. They rehearse in the morning. It's nice to hear them when you're walking by. Um, when I worked across the street, we have fourth and fifth grade band, and the directors would throw me out because I tried to teach a terrible alternate fingering on clarinet. And they're like, get out, don't listen to Mr.
We're not ready for that.
Yeah, no, well, they didn't like it because
Oh,
I would teach one and one on E flat, and they're like, no, get out. No, we're not teaching that. No, no. So just trying to have a good time with them.
I love that. Um, so with your experience as a band director as well as an administrator, what could you share with us that will help in working with our administrators who often don't understand what we're doing in the band room?
Up and I've really, as a teacher, I never really had anyone that understood what I do. So I can
Mhm.
totally feel for that. Which could be, if you think of it in a different way, it's a blessing. They don't know what you're doing and they don't know how to even evaluate that. So if you're band teachers especially, if you're looking at Charlotte Danielson, the domain two, which is basically the class structure, the procedures, the the way that your classroom is run, band directors are typically pretty good at that. When you're stepping off that podium to stepping on that podium, all those silly, what you think are like, oh, I got to go over that again. Instruments on the lap, getting ready for me when I put the arms up. There's classroom management behind it, and it does work. And it's like those nonverbal cues that I'm trying to work with classroom teachers on. There's all kinds of places for nonverbal cues, and band teachers are so great about it. Moving to the next thing, being efficient with rehearsal. We're always counting minutes. We're competing for minutes of the day, first of all.
Mhm.
And then those few, whether you have a 40-minute class, or if you're every other day in a high school and you have a block class of 90 and you won't see them for another couple of days, or I had 30 minutes per class when I was teaching in McHenry. When you have 84 kids in your sixth grade band and you only have 30 minutes to work with, you can't even like fist bump every kid and the class would be over. So being
Mhm.
efficient in your class is something that band directors typically figure out how to do pretty quickly.
They're also, if you don't have good classroom management, they're armed with noisemakers and they
Yes,
can
they
make
are.
they can make your life miserable real fast.
And that's something I would explain to my evaluators the first time. I said, first 120 seconds, it's going to look like chaos. It's going to look like chaos. I don't let them blast. I don't let them do that, but they're all over the place and they're shifting around. I had a room that was just like everybody else. It's too small for the band that you have. And they're tripping over each other best they can, trying to put the cases over here. The trombones are over here. I can't move the trombone case over there because I don't, because of, fixed to the wall or whatever, but we do what we can. Once I step on that podium, boom, we're done. It's time for all the sounds to stop. We're ready to go. And then we start with our warm up.
Um, so now that you're a vice principal, or I guess I would say an administrator of any kind.
Mhm.
So what about if you're a good band director? What kind of translated over real quick to being the administrator?
There's so many like leadership skills that come naturally. For example, I do what's called the Alice training for our district. And Alice is like it's an emergency training, a school shooter kind of response training. And there are people who come out of classrooms that they're used to teaching 25, 30, that would be overwhelmed by having a group of 200 in front of you doing this and then running drills and things like that. It goes back to the days when you're student teaching and you're following a director on top of the platform with the megaphone going from set 16 to 17 in the marching band show. How are they getting 150 kids out on a field to do all of that? Careful planning, thinking about it step by step, just feeling confident in yourself that you're going to be able to direct this. It's the same kind of thing that transfers into working with adults. You have to listen, you have to know what to expect, you got to know your audience and who's in your group. It's those same skills that really help. And they also say, and I've noticed this too, when you have the whole group of kids in the assembly, when you have 700 kids or whatever, who are you going to put out there? The music teacher or the PE teacher? They're
Yep.
used to dealing with large groups of kids. Lunchroom is like I've taken 100 kids to Culver's at a time and not had a problem, except that everyone's wearing the bibs. Fine. If that's the biggest problem I have, that's great. I can do lunchroom duty all day long. I'll take 300 at once because I've had so many experiences like that. So those experiences that, that are just natural to band directing, logistics and things like that, those have really helped me to do the job that I have to do.
I also have talked with people who are band directors and now they've moved into the corporate world or whatever. And you have these conversations about like, I'm not trained for anything except for being a band director. We think that, right? Like I can't do anything else. Like that's actually not the case. If you're a good band director, there's odds are you can do almost anything in that school.
There's there is, it's like you just learn how to teach and learning content, somebody else's content. It's harder for somebody else to come in and run the band than it is for the band teacher to run somebody else. Now, I've subbed for honors geometry a few times when we didn't have a sub, and that, we're going to do whatever the teacher wants to do. And if you have questions, we'll get to that tomorrow. I know my limitations. But there are so many things you can do and that transfer out of that realm. It's just a natural thing of how many plates can you put on a stick and twirl them and balance them. There's just so many more of those things that come out of teaching band because you're running three different, a middle school level only. You've got a sixth grade band, a seventh grade band, eighth grade band. Over here, our director has three different jazz bands that he runs. He's got a whole program of jazz that happens before school. That would overwhelm, I think, most people, but it happens. And those are just normalities that you have as a band teacher.
I also think, band directors don't give themselves enough credit for what they're doing. So, for
Mhm.
example, think about a normal test in the
Mhm.
band world, right? Like,
Right.
okay, the band can sound great. Let's not even talk about the fact they're playing instruments together at one time and everybody has ears so they can hear it. Well, then it can sound great, but that's not good enough. We're going to do it at night. We're going to dress you up and we're going to make it late so you're tired and we're going to make it so it's hot because we're put the stage lights on. We're going to invite your parents and then we're
Right.
going to do it again right now. Like if that was any other subject, our heads would explode. Like, wait, what are you talking about? So we're used to that level.
Right. When you hear other teachers will say, "Oh, this period is 3 days behind this period. This period is, a days ahead of this period. We might have to push back our assessment." No, that concert's on the books.
Yep.
There's no getting behind of somebody else. It's like that assessment is in front of everyone and their mom. You're putting yourself out there. Like, how good is that group going to do on what you have planned to do? So there's so much on the line at that, whether, the preparation, the planning you had, did you pick a piece that you can do in that rehearsal time that you have? I mean, you're not going to do a grade three piece if you only have 3 weeks left to go, most places, but you just have to be, I don't have the word for it, but you just really have to, last
Yeah.
last day for me. I'm trying my best, but you really have to have a great set of planning skills, um, based on the time that you have to pull off a great assessment in front of, again, everyone.
So, in full disclosure, this is coming out in August. So, who knows when people are listening to it? But
Yeah,
you and I are recording different states, different time zones, but we're both on our last day of school that we just finished. So, we have
right,
the ultimate band director Friday end of
right.
school brain. Yeah, administrator brain. Um, so, regarding classroom management, I assume at your role now, you help teachers in classroom management, and I assume some are better at classroom management than others and all that. So, what about what lessons from the band directors from your time in the band room works with people who are dealing with classroom management as normal classroom teachers?
Keep them engaged. Keep them engaged. When you'll see other lessons happen, and if there's downtime, that's when stuff starts to happen. If you're taking a break in between activities, it's like, um transitions between pieces. And that's something you work on, you hear about in your college preparation. Don't make that transition more than, I don't know, whatever that the particular professor says. Boom, boom, boom. Here, okay, we have 30 seconds to literally switch one piece of music. We don't need to have a whole conversation. Don't need to do all this. Just get the music out. A lot of teachers struggle with those transitions in their classrooms.
Mhm.
Band directors are just really good at it because again, time is valuable. Time is our worst enemy because it's always moving, and we have so much to do. And then if we're running successful programs, we have so many kids that we need to get through and teach this and get them to do it cohesively together before it's time to make that performance.
Yeah, and the more you teach, the more you can read the room. Yeah, classroom
Yes,
teachers the same, like reading the room, reading the kids. It's like
right,
we're half entertainer and we're
right.
half educator. It's like you're trying to walk that line. Like, yes, I'm trying to keep them engaged, especially in band. Like, if you're not engaging, they're gonna leave. They don't have to be there. You're your own recruiter, right?
And I
So
would
like that balance between like being silly and goofy and making it so they love being with you, but also you want to be a great educator and do all the things you have to do. It's hard to
That was
walk that
something
line.
I had to work with when I first started because you want to make those connections and make those connections, but okay, I'm making connections with this group here, but whoever's in the back over on this left side, this left side is now disengaged. Now I got to bring them back as well as keep them here and pull them all together. If we just like step off, give them their time to switch music, step back on. Okay, if you're not engaged, I'm stepping back off again, and now we're going to get back on again, and then we could start whatever's next.
I heard somebody tell me once, and it just always stuck with me, that in your classroom, everything that happens, you're allowing to happen.
Yeah, there's that.
That this, like, if you have a behavior that's happening in your band, well, you're okay with that, because if you weren't okay with it, you would do something to fix it.
I would. I used to really think that, and as an administrator, I have come to realize there's a lot of things that are out of your control.
Hmm.
There's just you can't beat. I used to beat myself up over like everything that happened in my classroom. That's on me. That's on me. And now I look back, it's like, what condition did that student come in that day? What happened in that previous class? You know what I'm saying? They
Mm-hmm.
might have had we're in 2025. There are sometimes a class has to get cleared for whatever reason. There's any number of things that could have happened at lunch. I'll give you an example. When I was teaching, the last 4 years I taught, the way the schedule worked is the kids would go to their lunch, and then they would come to the band and choir had their own period, and it would happen after the lunch. So the kids would cycle through lunch, then come to band. So I had 3 classes in a row, all of them after lunch. And you would hear the teachers, the rest of the teachers had like, they call it student assistance time, but a lot of it was working, but they come back to lunch all crazy. And I'm like, hey, I got to do my main instruction. And I have it 3 times. So I had to learn really quickly how to calm these kids down from who knows what happened in the lunchroom, because I'm teaching my sixth grade class and the eighth grade class, who knows what is happening in that lunchroom at that time. Then they come in, guess what happened at lunch? I don't know, but we got a concert next week. Tell me after. But let's calm it down now. Everybody take a breath. Let's do this. So, there's just a lot of things, and I didn't realize at the time, but it's seeing things as an administrator, being around the building, working with the many students that I get to work with, as an administrator, even with all the non-band students, there's just so many things that are out of your control. You have to be patient with yourself. And there's that 1% time that I couldn't have done a thing about that,
Yep.
but we managed. We did the best we could with what we had. That's what you have to. I feel like we need to be. When I talk with teachers, that they think that when they're doing their, especially ones that have been doing this for 25 years, and maybe have had different administrators 15 years ago that looked at this differently. They're thinking they have to do a dog and pony show. They have to do the best and do the best they have to do. And I just tell them right up front, and this, the younger teachers don't get this, but I say, it's like, how are you going to play whack-a-mole? And I have to explain whack-a-mole these days now, but how are you going to play whack-a-mole? Because you can't tell what condition these 25, 30 kids are going to come into your class. So how are you going to handle that? Because stuff's going to happen. You're going to put down your papers. You're going to put down your baton, and you're going to forget where you put it. You're going to put down your score for whatever piece you're about to look at because you have 1,000 things going on in your brain. How are you going to handle that? Sometimes you just got to take the flute part and go because that's what you have in front of you. You're not going to waste 5 minutes retracing your steps because you have 8 minutes left to get this done.
And the whole, but like reading the room and knowing the kids, more experienced teachers get better at that. Like you remember the time like you'd stop your band and you say, I literally have 40 things I want to tell them right now.
Right.
But they just had lunch. They had lunch. What's one? Because in 15 seconds, we need to be playing again, or else they're
Right.
going to be crazy. Right. So
Right.
like it's not that I don't want to teach them about this, but like I can't get to all of that. When I was a younger teacher, I try to get to all of it, and then they'd get none of
Right.
it. They get none of it.
You almost have to like as you're pre-planning doing your score study or whatever, and you know the strengths and weaknesses of your groups. What are you going to struggle with right up front, and then you just kind of take it. What did you hear today? You make little notes. We'll try to get to that tomorrow. Here are, out of those 40 things, what are seven I can get to tomorrow, and what are my bonus that I can get to if those seven go really well by chance. And maybe those seven don't go well, you only get to five. Well, those two go to the next day, but you keep track of what you need to do.
And when in doubt, teach tone. That's always a
Yes,
helper. Okay, let's talk a little bit about administration speak. So if Nick, if
sure.
you're observing me, I know you're observing me, and you're a past band director. But so how do we sort of relate to our administrators who are looking for certain things, but our class doesn't necessarily look that way?
You know, it, there's a lot of ways it does look the same. The classroom management, are your systems in place for your class? What are your goals for the learning? There's different. You'll see like on board teachers that they joke about putting your learning objectives on the board. And a lot of people do that, and a lot of people expect that. I don't. That's not a thing for me. But is there learning taking place? What is your assessment? Now, I as a teacher, when I watch our band director here at school, I'm like, I know you're assessing right now. I can see exactly what you're doing, and we're coming back. Let's try that again because I can hear what he's doing. The constant informal assessment. So using terms like, okay, our informal assessment, I heard this. I heard this from the clarinets. We need to worry about this. My sixth grade group, we're trying to get them all across the break. Doesn't mean it's going to happen tomorrow, but we're still trying. We have most of them there. We're setting goals for ourselves, setting goals for the group, and then and like you said before, I mean, making sure we have a good tone along the way. Doing all those fundamentals as we do that.
And sometimes I've even talked to administrators, and they don't really even think of the fact that when we hear it, that's how we know they understand it or not. They might
Right.
say, well, what are you going to do next? Well, I don't know. It depends on what we hear. So
Right.
that like things that you understand, but sometimes administrators don't necessarily like. We're going to pivot because I might know where we're going to go, but we have to change based on what we're hearing.
Like you and I and every band director, you could walk past somebody else's band room when rehearsal's going on, and you can hear, hey, that sounded great. Oh, we got to work on that. You don't. Let's take beginning band for example. You go from people can tell when they first take the out of the cases that sound to Mary Had a Little Lamb to playing some kind of full band piece at the end of the year. They can hear that. We can hear that seventh grade. They're working on that right now. I can tell, they're making progress there, and you can hear all the things that need to be addressed because that's what we're trained to do. And if you're not musically trained, you're not going to hear that. But what they're seeing, it's just more important to what they're seeing, and just be descriptive what you're working on, with different groups of students, how you're learning to be expressive, how what kind of, how it includes other subject areas too.
Mhm.
What music literacy, is there some kind of cultural aspect that you're trying to teach along the way, something historical, what kind of math is involved? Are you doing something in a 7/8 time signature? Are you doing something in a 6/8 time signature, something in 3/4, or just something that's in 4/4, or some kind of march? What is that? What are we doing with that, and how are we helping them stay on pace? Are they rushing through the march? Are they going too slow through the march?
Mhm.
Are they stylistically correct? Are they doing it in the style that would have been done 100 years ago from whatever continent or country that march would have come from? Being creative, if you have a jazz band, that creation, and the communication too. As I've been thinking about we all know this. It's you're speaking a language when you play music. Everyone has their own parts in a piece of music, whether it's concert band or jazz band. And now you're being creative when you're trading fours in a jazz band solo. My kids are now old enough, they're in band. They don't think I know what I'm talking about anymore because they think they know more than me. And then I show them YouTube videos from 18 years ago. But seeing my daughter up there doing an alto sax solo and using the blues scale and moving in and out of the chord changes, I can hear what she's doing, and she's being expressive and she's being creative. And there's a lot of brain power that goes into that. How are you engaging these students? How are you giving them leadership opportunities? That's what your administrators I feel, are looking for.
Sometimes they try to describe what kind of learning goals they want. And in my head, what makes sense in my classroom is I'm going to write the agenda on the board of what we're working on. Like we're
Right.
working on this, followed by this, followed by this. And I rarely have what we're working on. It might be like, here's the 30 measures we have to work on. But to a
Mhm.
non-musician, it's not going to make a lot of sense. But it's
Mhm.
like, I'm not going to write the 10 things we're working on, the tone, the pitch, the like all the like that's just we're working on all of it, you know. So to me, when they say put learning goals, that's not a problem because like
Right.
I'm going to put what we're doing anyway. I'm not, it's like this is not the day we're teaching tone.
Right.
Like it's
Right.
not the day we're teaching embouchure. It's like it's all of it all the time.
And when we talk about, I remember an eighth grade math and science teacher said this to me. I was teaching, and we were in, somebody scheduled two RTI trainings from separate people back to back, the first day back from summer. So we all weren't happy. But we're sitting there and we're talking triangles for hours on end. And she looks at me, she goes, because there's the type three, there's
Tier
yeah,
three.
yeah, tier three, tier two, tier one. The tier one is everyone, the tier two is the small groups, the tier three is, and she's like, this is what you do. You have everyone there. There's your tier one. Here's your tier two with your small group and your sectionals and the lessons you're pulling from the lessons. And then when you have those students that really need that extra help, you're doing what you have to do to pull them. That tier three assistance. She's like, you're doing RTI just in your natural world. I'm like, I guess I am. Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
A question off the top of my head. As you think back to your time as a band director, what pieces come to mind that you were like, you knew was going to be great learning for them? Or maybe a piece that you've heard Brent do down the hall that you're like, yeah, these are pieces that band directors should do.
He did. I forgot who wrote it. It was called Highland Legend.
John Moss.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yes, that's a big one, and that had just come out. I took that to contest the last year I went to contest. I always liked that Fanfare and Flourishes by James Curnow. I always did the grade two version, not the hard version.
Yep.
Um, and then I mean, everyone loved my daughter's band's playing the Great Have you ever heard of this piece called The Great Locomotive Chase? And she's 13, she's going in eighth grade. I'm like, yes, I have heard that. I have heard that. Have you ever played the Star Wars stuff? And yes. It's almost 40 years ago I've been playing Star Wars, but yes, I'll yes. But yeah, agree. So I guess they're going to play the Great Locomotive Chase next year, and so that she's on clarinet. Da-da-da, 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 da-da-da. She's like, you know this piece? I'm like, yeah, da-da-da, da-da-da, da-da. Yeah, and you're gonna have a train bell. It's gonna be a whole thing. How do you know this? Because I taught it. But there's always well, that was Robert W. Smith, right?
Yep.
He always he has his style, and kids get excited. What was another one I always pulled out for graduation? The tribal drums, because I always had a ton of percussion and I kept them busy.
Cool.
Uh, I think it was Schaefer,
David
Dan,
Schaefer.
David Schaefer,
Yep.
and they always liked the little people that were in the title. So, uh, yeah, that was a standard for us.
I love that. Um, so what's the middle school band schedule like in your school? And I guess the question would be, like are there tips for administrators when it comes to scheduling it, or like good schedules versus worse schedules, or is it like do what you can and the great teacher's going to make it work? What's your thoughts?
it's we just went through a we're going through a gradual scheduling process as we are going through our strategic plan here as a district, introducing more push in for our intervention services and for our special education services, for our English language learner services. So we're shifting things all around. We want to make sure to give the kids all the opportunities. I mean, here at Fremont, we have our band. If you're just in band, you're meeting every other day for 45 minutes, alternating with another class of some type, whether that's a music slash theater kind of class, a technology class, an art class. We're getting into some career and career technical education courses. We're kind of a hybrid of middle school, junior high a little bit. We're giving them more choices as opposed to this is where your schedule fits. We do have a choir program. So there are kids that are only in choir, kids that are in both band and choir. So the kids that are in band and choir, instead of going every other day to band, they go every other day. So it's like A day is band, B day is related studies, A day is choir. So it's important again, time and the consistency of every other day. It's like those kids that have it every 4 days now have to do a little bit to keep up. They have to do a little bit on their own to keep up. So it's tricky, in Illinois, one of the aspects we have to work with, we have mandatory daily PE. I grew up in Missouri, so I had PE like every other day or every other quarter or something like that. And it has to be every day in the schedule. So again, we're all competing for minutes.
Mhm.
So trying to fit it in, make sure the kids have enough of it. And we have some kind of system where they're pulled for a lesson maybe once a week during a PE session, and they combine with something else. It's if I could draw a whole John method of how it works here. It's not simple, but it's working. And I mean, I make sure and point this out. We have 7 or 8 kids that make all district, many, enough that it's a big deal that we have so many kids that make all district band every year. Because I make sure and point that out when it comes up. That does not happen everywhere. I was happy when I got 2.
Yeah.
That was so excited because that was it wasn't, you get, if you send your school, you get 1 just to get 1. And then when you get 2, that means they both really got in. And so it was a big celebration for me when I got 2. And Brent, our band director, he gets a ton, both in jazz and in concert band.
I got to meet with Brent. I've heard a lot about him.
He's really good. He's been here since the 1900s, I tell him.
Nick, thanks so much for being with us today. I just have one last question for any band directors
Sure.
who are currently like on the fence, thinking about becoming admin, thinking about maybe getting certification or moving towards that. Do you have any? This is sort of an off the book question. Any advice for them?
Shadow some more. Find out what it's really like. Um, when you work with your band, it's different when you work with your band parents and they love you so much. And I've had enough praise and thank you, Mr. Ashley, you're so wonderful. I had a whole career worth of that, and it's great. You do things and you don't get the immediate reward that you do as a band director. You do things as it has to be done. Just be prepared for that. You're gonna, sometimes things will get messy, and the problem comes to you, and you're the one that has to solve it. And I enjoy that. It's part of my skills of working with people. Just kind of ask your principal what that's like. What is it truly like outside of what you see as the band director? And I did too. My motto was the less I hear from the principal, that means I'm doing a good job.
Yep.
So if we don't talk for 6 months, we're good. I'm good. High five. Here we go. How you doing today? But go sit in the office. You know what? That's what I also did. I went and sat in the office a few times just to see what comes in and out. Like on my planning period, just kind of chill and see what happens, because you'll see some shows sometimes. You'll see really, if you have good management in your classroom, you don't know what's going on out in the rest of the building.
It's true.
So you visit other classrooms, visit the office, and talk with your people. That'll give you a pretty good picture of what globally you're going to see if you move into administrative role.
Nick, thanks so much. This has been great. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity. I hope it goes well for everybody, and keep directing. I love everything that band directors are doing, and appreciate the time today.
We sincerely appreciate you taking your valuable time and listening to the Growing Band Director podcast. Your students are very lucky to have a band director like you. If you have any suggestions for episode topics or think you have an area of expertise to share on a show with us, please reach out. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to help spread the word, please give us a 5-star review and tell your band director friends to subscribe as well. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, our YouTube channel, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks for listening to The Growing Band Director. See you next week.